The Nintendo Switch 2 is out, and it's been a game changer for the Switch Pokémon speedruns. One of the most staggering differences is Scarlet and Violet, where the any % speedrun is now 30 minutes faster thanks to the Switch 2's performance improvements. Don't panic, the Switch 1 footage didn't freeze, it just performs like that. Even games that didn't get a Switch 2 patch are seeing performance boost. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, for example, feature faster loads and 0 frame drops. Basically, every Switch Pokémon speedrun is faster on the Switch 2. But that's only partially the reason why I'm making this video. You see, despite Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee benefiting the least from the Switch 2's buff performance, I'd argue that their speedruns actually needed this boost the most. It's all the fault of one specific Pokemon, and the super rare Let's Go mechanic that turns it into a completely game-breaking encounter. So let's talk about my favorite Pokemon speedrun, the mechanic that breaks it, and why we desperately needed the Switch 2 to temporarily save it. Any % no mount skips is the most popular category for the games, and it's awesome. It's by far my favorite Pokemon speedrun, and I have spent well over 2,500 hours running it, mostly because it's unlike every other Pokemon speedrun. There's no RNG manipulation, and in a lot of ways, it's the Pokemon speedrun that is closest to a randomizer run. Why is that the case? Well, it's a fairly normal Pokemon speedrun. You become champion as quickly as possible by doing lots of battles and spamming X items. Except, you also have to register 50 Pokemon in your Pokedex, or you can't even beat the game. This is because one of the gym leaders, Koga, will not let you enter his gym until you meet this 50 Pokemon requirement. As a result, most of the run revolves around catching and evolving Pokemon as efficiently as possible. Since it's a speedrun, you can't just wait around to catch the same 50 Pokemon every run. In order to go fast, you have to constantly move and adapt your route as you go. This makes the speedrun significantly more dynamic. Every run is different from the last. You are frequently put into new situations every run, and you constantly have to make decisions that will make or break it. Really, the only bad part is that you have to use motion controls, which can sometimes lead to stuff like this. Ow! Oh, I hit my balls. I cannot stress how incredible this speedrun is. I don't want to get too into it, but it's just an accidental, perfect storm of dozens of factors that create an amazing speedrunning experience. I do runs often on Twitch, so you can drop me a follow there if you don't believe me. Now, there is one problem with the speedrun, what the community refers to as the Supersize Mechanic. If you've played Let's Go Eevee or Let's Go Pikachu, you probably saw a Pokemon that had a glowing blue or red aura around them. These auras tell you if the Pokemon is either tiny or huge in size, respectively. Speedrunners love seeing glowing Pokemon because they give a size bonus that gives 1.5 times more experience over non-glowing, average size catches. Let's take a look at an example. This level 9 Bellsprout has a base experience value of 30. Under regular speedrun circumstances, the total bonus experience modifier for a non-glowing Bellsprout catch adds up to 6.6. A glowing Bellsprout with its size bonus totals up to a 9.9 bonus multiplier. Note the game says 9.8, but this seems to be a bug. The experience value does correspond to a modifier of 9.9. Experience from glowing Pokemon isn't consistent though. Sometimes you might see a much larger bonus multiplier out of nowhere. For this Bellsprout, you might see 26.4 instead of 9.9. What gives? In these rare cases, the Pokemon is either extra small or extra large. These Pokemon are what speedrunners call supersized. For these super Pokemon, the size bonus will be an additional multiplier of 4 instead of 1.5. You have no way of knowing if a glowing Pokemon is supersized or not until you catch it, but catching one can be a big deal in a speedrun. Anubis did a great write-up about how the mechanic works, I'll link it in the description. Now, I said earlier that this was a problem, but isn't experience good? Well, level ups take time in Let's Go, and unexpected unnecessary level ups can lose you a good amount of time. Imagine you have a full party of Pokemon that all need 1 level to evolve. But you luck into a supersized Pokemon and they all gain 3 levels instead. That's about 15 seconds of extra level ups you didn't need, but you still have to sit through every individual level up box. This is why party management, namely depositing Pokemon shortly after they evolve, is really important in the run. But surprise supersizes can ruin your planning out of nowhere. Most of the time, however, catching a supersized Pokemon is just good. In fact, it's too good. Experience, especially a lot of it, speeds up evolutions to hit your 50 Pokemon requirement and gives your starter extra levels. Extra levels lets you save more time in battles. For example, a key breakpoint for the Eevee version is hitting level 28, the level Eevee learns Double Edge. You typically don't hit this level until entering Team Rocket's hideout, but a lucky supersized catch can give you this powerful move 20 minutes earlier. This 120 base power move lets you speed up several mid-game fights, so the earlier you get it, the better your speedrun is. That sounds great, and the unnecessary level ups are probably fine most of the time given the upside, so what's the real problem here? Well, supersized Pokemon are super rare and inconsistent. Higher catch combos skew Pokemon to be supersized more often, but we never catch the same Pokemon twice in the speedrun because it's slow. So for the speedrun, the typical odds of a Pokemon being supersized is just 3.2%. Getting a supersized Pokemon can be a big boon to your speedrun, but it's an incredibly unreliable one that most runs never get. This mechanic alone isn't game-breaking, as you likely aren't catching multiple supersized Pokemon in a single speedrun, if any, but there is a Pokemon that, when supersized, radically alters the course of a speedrun.
I saw it! It's big, scary, and pink!
Chansey. The first place you can catch Chansey is in Mount Moon, which is one of many locations where Chansey is designated as a rare spawn. This means that its spawn rate, assuming no catch combos, is 0.5%. Being such a rare encounter, Chansey gives a lot of EXP, like a completely absurd amount. Clefairy is typically the catch that gives you the most experience here, granting you 389 experience on a perfect catch. In comparison, a perfect Chansey catch will give you 1,591 experience points. Now imagine it's glowing. A 1.5 times bonus multiplier brings that up to 2,386. Now, imagine if it was supersize. That brings us up to a mind-bending 6,362 experience points. For context on how absurd this will instantly catapult your party to level 22, out-leveling Misty and nearly matching Lieutenant Surge's team, all before you reach Cerulean City. You might have put 2 and 2 together already, but both the Eevee and Pikachu world records catch a supersized Chansey. Humble brag, I got this Eevee world record back in 2023, while Randall Eats Cheese holds the more recent Pikachu world record. At the time of its achievement, my Eevee record was nearly 3 minutes better than the second place run. This was a massive, unheard of jump at the time, and it was all thanks to the pink blob. But how rare is a supersized Chansey? Well, given that it's 0.5% to spawn and the odds of it being supersized are about 3.2%, the odds of a single spawn being a supersized Chansey is approximately 0.016% or 1 in 6,250. Yes, this encounter is even rarer than modern full odds shinies. Obviously, there are lots of spawns in any given area, but since Chansey is a designated rare spawn, only one Chansey can be present at any point in time. There's also only 2 realistic places to catch it in the run, Mount Moon and Route 6. Catching Chansey later than Route 6 is usually too risky given how much more likely it is to break out and lose time. All in all, it's a super rare occurrence that has happened to me like 3 times ever, and I've done thousands of runs. Okay, so looking at this clip from my world record, I'm getting tons of extra levels on Pokemon that don't need it, like Jigglypuff, so it can't be that good, right? Well, in this run, I lost 15 seconds to Jigglypuff level ups, and I made up for it immediately in the next battle. Yes, within 5 minutes, I already erased the time loss thanks to the extra experience on my Eevee. The normal strat for this battle with our rival is to basically 2v1 him using the game's support trainer. But by being 9 levels higher than normal, I was able to just one-shot all of his Pokemon without the support trainer or any X items. This saved me 30 seconds instantly, and of course I saved much more time on every fight for the next 45 minutes. So yeah, this super rare, supersized Chansey catch is absurdly good and saves a ridiculous amount of time. I also need to point out that just getting supersized Chansey doesn't mean you get a free world record. Playing well while freaking out about how lucky the run is and trying not to fumble this 1 in 6,250 speedrun is stressful, to say the least. And not only do you have to play well, but you also have to be lucky enough everywhere else. You have to not get unlucky with breakouts, get enough catches for Koga, not get obliterated by the worst fight in the game, not get obliterated by the next worst fight in the game, not get too many protects on Koga, hit an 80% accurate Hydro Pump or else the run's dead, not get crit by Giovanni, not die to Agatha, not get crit by Lance, which sometimes happens on the GDQ main stage and your run gets mercy killed, ha 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 ha, and finally, you have to not get crit by the Pokemon League champion. Why do I speedrun Pokemon? Suffice to say, it's a miracle that both Eevee and Pikachu world records managed to finish after hitting the big pink EXP pinata. And there have been a handful of runs by myself and other runners that did get a supersized Chansey but didn't finish. For context, I only finished 2% of my own Let's Go speedruns. But speedrunning Let's Go isn't a hopeless endeavor. To be clear, these runs absolutely can be beaten without getting a supersized Chansey. These runs obviously aren't perfect, and really good RNG plus really good execution can definitely beat these records. Both of these runs are not free from mistakes or bad RNG, they just had one major instance of insanely good RNG in the form of Supersize Chansey, while simultaneously having good enough RNG and execution to not die anywhere else in the run. Let's Go is a speedrun with an absurdly high skill ceiling. Even as someone who has done over 2,500 hours of runs, I think I'm nowhere near perfect play. There's definitely room to play better and save time compared to these world records through better execution and decision making alone. My Eevee record was set on February 8th, 2023. Since then, all the times above it have improved pretty significantly. I said earlier that second place at the time was a 301. Now a 301 doesn't even break the top 6. Clearly there's room to improve here without getting the juicy 1 in 6,250. So I yapped a bunch about this mechanic and how busted it is, but what does this have to do with the Switch 2? Was there an upgrade patch? Did Nintendo stealth nerf Chansey? No, but the console's release sort of relieves this issue. Playing Let's Go on the Switch 2 might not feel super different for casual players, but speedrunners could feel the improvements instantly. The most notoriously slow load in the game takes place after leaving the SSN. This is probably the clearest example of the Switch 2's load time improvements. It's almost twice as fast compared to the original Switch. Every load is just faster, and there are tons of small loads in the game. When the original Switch was docked, the game generally performed well and maintained 30 FPS, but would dip in some places. In classic Game Freak nature, speed is tied to frame rate, so losing frames is literally losing time. For example, leaving Cerulean would always tank your frame rate for a second, or just standing in Viridian Forest with too many Pokemon would chug. Menus are just much smoother too. Pretty commonly on the old console, you'd drop a couple frames here or there just trying to use items in battle. This time save is so significant that I managed to easily beat my Chansey-filled Eevee world record on the Switch 2 launch day, and since then I've brought down the Eevee record to 2:55:15. The dynamic nature of the Let's Go speedrun means that it's way harder to gauge exactly how much time is saved, but overall it looks like the Switch 2 saves over 5 minutes. This is a big enough difference to cause a leaderboard split, meaning that Switch 2 runs are not competing against Switch 1 runs. Commonly in speedrunning, runners will flock to whatever console is faster if it's available to them, so most people will be migrating fully to running on Switch 2. We can all rest easy and grind for that top leaderboard spot again without worrying about getting obscenely lucky. Ultimately, the Switch 2 just buys us time until the next world record Supersize Chansey runs. But it's enough to motivate people to run the game again and start more serious world record attempts for the time being. It's an exciting time for the Switch Pokemon speedrunning community, and I cannot wait to see how things shake out. Unfortunately, this fix also costs $450 US. Runners still on Switch 1 will have to deal with the Chansey records until they pay out. Obviously, the game's not unrunnable on Switch 1, it runs really well compared to some other games. It's just going to be a much bigger grind to beat either record if you don't want to pay to win. Of course, if you're not going for record, you can still have a great time running on either console. Personally speaking, I am stoked to do more runs now that I don't have to compete against the absurdity of the pink EXP balloon, even if it's temporary. The speedrunning community is just better and more exciting when multiple people are grinding to get that top time. So yeah, Nintendo unintentionally fixed our community's Chansey problem, albeit indirectly and temporarily. Place your bets in the comments for how long it takes for someone to get the next Supersize Chansey world record, I guess. Hopefully I don't have to make a follow-up video too soon, but if I do, definitely subscribe so you don't miss it, or my upcoming Gen 4 glitch video. Thank you to all of my Patreon supporters, and special shoutouts to Florio, Mithra Was Taken, Rhoda, and Fuzzy Hugs for your support. That's going to be it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.